Has it been 5 years that we've been chatting? Holy bananas. I'm doing excellent, and I'm so happy to be back to chat today.
Thank you. I know that you mentioned we're going to talk about communication.
Yeah. Let's
Love.
communicate about communicating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I was speaking to someone about this, a friend, and he was saying, sorry, she was saying that we all want communication in our relationships, but when it actually is time to communicate, the silence is what
Ooh.
follows, right? Like
Okay.
like why do you think so many people struggle just to communicate with someone that they're saying that they love?
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to that vulnerability of not knowing how someone's going to respond, if you're going to be hurting someone, if they're going to react negatively. I think at the root of it is a primal fear of abandonment. Just cut right to the chase today.
Yeah, well, don't sugarcoat it with me. So abandonment from when, like their childhood, teenagehood, if that's a word, or adulthood, or all three.
Yeah, well, if it's a current partner, the fear I think is that they're going to disrupt things enough that the person says, well, enough of this, I'm out. Or if that's your new boundary, I'm not into it, I'm out. Or if that's what you really think of me, I don't want to hear that, I'm out. And I think the vulnerability that comes with communication is really about this fear of being left, of being alone.
You have me thinking now.
I see your thinking.
You have me thinking now. So I don't communicate well because I don't want to be vulnerable. Because if I become vulnerable, it's scary, and I'm in a position where I may be hurt.
Yeah.
But the only way to properly communicate is to open yourself to the possibility of being hurt.
Yes. And I think it's okay when we're communicating with our loved ones, especially in hard communication or hard conversations, to express those vulnerabilities. I'm nervous about telling you this. I feel a little bit shaky inside when I consider having this conversation. I think those things are okay to say out loud and almost make it easier because now there's no pretense. Everything is just sort of out there, and it sets the stage for uh, understanding, receiving of the message that you're trying to get across.
So if I look at like my relationship, so if I'm in a relationship and this other person's in a relationship, we're all happy. And we're all
Yeah.
trying to understand how to communicate. Is it then we need to identify our communication style and then communicate in the way that the person can understand us best? Or do we do like some people do and say that, you know what, I'm going to communicate with you this way and you better understand it?
Yeah, so there's some disciplines that suggest that the receipt of the message is dependent on the receiver, and then some that say it's dependent on the speaker. And I think both are true. If you know someone's information, if you know someone's preference for how they like to receive information, then use that. And and what I mean by that, so say for example, say someone feels more comfortable when there's touch involved. And they're more likely to be able to hear when they're being connected with physically, just maybe a handhold or an arm around the shoulder. Then do that, use that, right? And maybe someone has the opposite. They don't want to have any kind of contact when they're having these types of conversations. Then use that. I think it is up to the responsibility of the speaker to speak or communicate in a way that their message will be heard. And if it's communicated in one way and it's missed, then try a different way. And if that's missed, then try a different way. Use different words, position yourself differently. So actually changing how you're aligned in physical space to the person. All of these types of things can change how messages are received. Yeah, it's a complex topic, communication.
It is, because I look at, let's say, if we take a step outside relationships, let's say we do public speaking, we're
Yes.
communicating with someone,
Yeah.
right? If I'm trying to get my message across to you, Tanya, or to someone else, it is my responsibility to get that message across as clear as possible and as simple as possible so the receiving audience understands it.
Yes.
Now, when you put two people in a relationship now, that where the waters get muddy, right? To your
Yeah.
point, right? Is it my responsibility? Is it your responsibility? Or is it a mixture of both? And you mentioned touch, and then I remember the book, The Five Love Languages.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I buy you a gift. Okay. I'm sorry I embrace you. Okay. I'm sorry I give you words of affirmation. Okay. So these are ways to communicate, right? I'm sorry I give you quality time, so on and so forth. But then I look at it as how many people ask the question, because I had to actually learn this. How do you want to be loved? How do you want to be communicated to? And then wait for the answer, because the way that my partner wanted to be communicated to was different than the way I wanted to be communicated. So we had to learn that together. But there are some growing pains there. But these are two people that have the experience. What if someone was getting into it and they're like, "You just don't understand me"? What do they do then, Tanya?
There's so many layers to that, but I think I'm going to just answer your question in a second here because what you're speaking to is this idea of communicating about communicating. What is it that you need for me to feel heard as when you're speaking and I'm the listener? What is it that I can do to help you hear me better? And having these dialogues about it's meta communication, it's a high level form of communication. Like, what is the best scenario, environment for us to be able to actually effectively listen and speak to each other? So, you just don't understand me is probably an old trigger from very early on, right? That's probably replaying itself with this new face in this new partnership, this new relationship. And not saying it's new, but just like new compared to being in childhood. And so you don't understand me is probably an old wound. And how do we deal with that? Then we start asking those questions. Okay, you're right. I'm not understanding. I want to understand. Explain it to me in a different way. Explain it to me as if you're teaching a child how to do it. And just keep being there and being available and present for them to find a way to communicate their truth that they're trying to express. Because often that you don't understand me comes with a lot of sort of anger, frustration, and stubbornness. And you'll often hear people say that thing, well, if you don't get it, then I'm not going to explain it to you. When that's the exact moment when it does need to be explained and explained in a way that, again, that will land and that will make sense for the person. Everybody has different filters that they're using to experience the world through. Of course, unconsciously, we're not waking up every day deciding this is the day that I refuse to be understood by my partner. This is all happening under the surface. And so when we come to these moments of those, you don't understand me, you never understand me, you're not listening to me, you don't hear me, pause and really acknowledge that it's probably an old tape playing out deep in the unconscious mind. And then also pause and as an adult, okay, well, what can I do differently here to help them understand me? Like take responsibility for it, right? And I think that's a big part of the communicating in relationships is people try to defer responsibility, they try to pass the buck, and at the end of the day, you just need to find a way to make it work and find a way to have your message be received. And it's okay also to, because these things can be emotionally charged, it's okay to come to these conversations, especially those hard ones, with notes. It's okay to come and acknowledge I've got some notes because I want to make sure I cover these points with you. That's okay. And if someone did that with me and came to me with a little, cheat sheet for what they wanted to make sure I understood, I'd be like, oh, this is a person who's really trying to take responsibility for their own communicating. I would respect that a lot.
Is that hard for people to accept
Yeah.
that the poor communication is a result of them not understanding that they may have to change the type of way that they're communicating?
Yeah, there's that stubbornness, right? People want to be right and they want to believe that the way they've been always doing things is the way that it always should be done. Maybe because they don't know better, or maybe that's just because it's so ingrained. And it's it's a mature person who can pause and reflect on their behaviors and their actions and say, where can I improve here? Where can I grow? How can I do this differently? And we're not taught this as kids, right? We are often taught to avoid our emotions, just smile, everything's okay, you're fine. It's all good, like just put a happy face on. And we don't, I mean, my generation, I think it's improving in terms of conscious parenting and things like this, where emotional intelligence and presence and listening is more widespread than it's been before historically, I would say, in humankind. But it's like this retraining because we didn't get access to that ability to be safe and vulnerable and still loved. Our emotions were sort of deferred away from us. And so we don't have that skill set. I'm speaking as a very global we. Like generally people don't have that skill set. So now as adults, when we're faced with these things that trigger us in relationships, we have to kind of bump up against that. And again, it's an opportunity to kind of pause and reflect and look inside and say, how can I do differently here?
What about the people then who are not comfortable with the potential of that type of confrontation and they're more passive in personality? So, what happens to them?
Yeah, these skills can still be learned and practiced. I am a salsa dancer and I practice dance all the time because I want to improve my skill level. Communicating is just something that can be learned and practiced. You learn new languages, you learn how to ride bikes, you learn how to drive cars, you can learn how to speak in a way that people understand. And there's gads and gads of books about this. Uh, the love languages is a great starting place because knowing how your person feels loved and how they like to give love is a great foundational place to begin.
I 100% agree. I think for me, it helped me because I was actually reading that book while I was on vacation in Indonesia.
Ooh.
Right. So, you know what? It was a beautiful scenery and I got to read it and I was like, wow, this is so and so interesting, right? Because you got the warm weather, you're on vacation, and it was fun. One thing I realized about myself was that one, there's five different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And then the second thing is that you begin to say, okay, I wasn't doing it the best with this person. I wasn't doing it the best with this person. This person, I did okay. This person, I did really well. But it's that self evaluation that helped me because it removed this idea that just because you know big words doesn't mean you're getting your point across,
Yes. Amen.
right? It took me down a notch, right? Forget the education, forget the university, forget all this stuff. It's like terrain, yes, you're very, as the young kids call it, you're very learned, right? Learned. You're
Learned.
very smart.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out, okay, why can't I get my point across when it's clear as day to me,
Hmm.
but as dark as darkness itself?
Yeah.
What do you think then are some of the obstacles that people face when they're trying to understand the root cause of their own form of communication not being able to get their point across to almost everyone outside of their own mind?
Mm. Okay. So I heard this question from someone, and I'm gonna say it here. Because there's an idea that everything that we do, every behavior that we enact and engage in is trying to meet some sort of need. It has an intention, a purpose. This is an underlying assumption in a lot of change work. Is that whatever you're doing, even if it's like a physical symptom, that's trying to do something for you. And this person's question was, so say this topic of not being understood. That's the behavior, let's just say, even though it's it's unconscious, right? They're not wanting to not be understood, but that's what's happening. Okay, so it exists. It's there. And then there's this assumption that it has to have some sort of purpose. So the question is, I absolutely refuse to be understood because, and then fill in the blank. And then I would ask that again. So I absolutely refuse to be understood because, and you can do this up to 7 times, and each time you're going to get a different insight. And why is this helpful? Because it does start to kind of drill down to some of those root causes. It's beneficial for me to not be understood because then I can stay right and stay righteous and have my, whatever it's going to end up being. And it's probably some ridiculous, faulty thing. But that type of exercise, those types of intensely worded questions really expose where these faulty connections inside us exist and allow us again to say, okay, well, now that I know that's there,